Tonight I'm going to introduce you to some 20-somethings that I think are pretty close to that. I don't know, I haven't met them yet. We've kept them in an isolation chamber. But I read about them last week, and I'm not sure if I even agree with them on everything. I don't know. We'll find out. They are 20-somethings. And just like every group of people, whether you're 20 or you're 50, there's two kinds of people. They're the kinds like the surfer dude that, was living off of, everybody else's hard work. And he's like, I'm having lobster night, dude. Yeah, rock on. And then there are the others, and I think this is the majority of people. The majority of people are the ones who are tired of religion and love faith. They're tired of, oh, really, the Red Cross is going to do that? And they're addicted to, I want to help. I want to do the right thing. These, I think, are a group of 20-somethings that are against all odds. They're standing against the GOP in California. I'm going to stand in line on that one. But in California, they're standing up and they're saying, no, we should be about principles. And their movement is starting to grow. They know that real charity doesn't involve compulsion, and neither do real principles. You have to be put together and think them through, and so we're going to see if they've thought their principles through and who they're all, and what their principles are, and see if their movement should spread or not. And we're not the final arbiters of that. The people of California are. But I wanted you to meet them, because both the left and the right are noticing these guys and what they're doing in California, because it is growing, and that's a good thing. I think because they understand liberty, because that's what they call themselves, the Liberty Kids, or at least that's what they're being called, the Liberty Kids. I'll introduce you to them next.
You know what? That's still not the big announcement. I just remember what it was. You guys, we're going to Dallas. Glenn Beck is flying us to Dallas, and we're going to be on the Glenn Beck program on the Blaze. You guys, seriously, that was pretty cool to get that invite, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, here they are. That was Nick Hankoff. Is that what I'm saying it right? Hankoff?
Yeah, you got it.
Chairman of the LA County Republican Liberty Caucus. The treasurer, Noah Johnson, is here. And Secretary Amir Zen.
Yeah.
How are you? I'm horrible at names. Okay. So I'm reading this story about you guys. I don't know, 2 weeks ago maybe it was out. I don't even remember. Where was it? Do you remember? Reuters, okay.
Reuters, yeah.
And it was talking about how you guys are changing California, how things are really kind of starting to move, and Republicans are really challenging. So I perk up and I'm like, oh, so he's challenging the Republicans. Yes. And then I start reading about you, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I really agree. 2 days later, I'm reading about how there's this new coalition forming in Great Britain. They're changing everything in Great Britain. And they're immediately xenophobic, racist, white trash, you name it. There's all these things. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that don't sound very good. And then I'm thinking to myself, what's wrong? That's what they say about me. Why am I believing them about these guys that I don't know? And I'm sure the same is with you guys, because as I'm reading it, I couldn't decide whether you are the most legitimate libertarian. I think libertarian is open-minded. Hey, let's just do what you do, leave me alone. I'll do what I do, leave me alone, right? But then at the same time, they made you look like crazy liberals, right? Is that the way?
That's what happens when you have a liberal journalist writing about you. We were really happy that a Reuters journalist was going to show up at our meeting, and
yeah, I remember when I was young and naive.
But you also, yeah. I think we've been making inroads, but then all of a sudden the mainstream media shows up, and you're like, yeah, just come on in, and we'll answer any questions you want. And so, what you ended up with was just this older school liberal kind of journalist, and they're going to, like anyone else, they're going to want to box you in right away so that they can, be comfortable with, even if they don't agree with you, they want to know exactly what you are, but they don't care too much about what you believe in. They just care about what they can call you.
Yeah, journalists are profoundly lazy. They have to find, okay, wait a minute, they just keep sliding this box over until it finally just slips into a deal, and they're like, okay, that's who you are. And they're not looking for nuance. They're not looking for the truth. They're just looking for a slot you will fit in.
Right, right. And I think one of the big things is that we kept trying to explain to the journalists that we believe in freedom on all these issues that we're talking about. And we talked about the free market a lot with the journalist. And there wasn't really one mention of it in the article.
I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, not at all. So, when people read it, they're like, wait a minute, these are just liberal positions,
Right.
But we talked about the economy and how our $17 trillion debt, how we're spread out militarily across the world, and but none of that was focused on. So we wish there was a little more focus on that, and that's kind of what we're here to show, is that we believe in free markets, we believe in freedom and liberty and peace.
So what do we do? I guess let me just jump into some hard issues. ISIS they're here.
Where?
Right here. My machete? But they're bad dudes. And we are looking at 1938, 39. This is a Nazi-style philosophy. I am so war-weary. We're not fighting to win anymore. We just lost the biggest group, if I'm not mistaken, the biggest group of Rangers we've ever lost in the history of the Rangers, because the Rangers now have to, if they're going after a bomb maker, you go in, you now have to knock on the door and say, Mr. Bomb Maker. We can't kick down the door. He's blew up all of our Rangers. Nobody's talking about that. The rules of engagement are insane. We're not playing to win. We're not even naming the enemy anymore. What do we do with something like ISIS?
I think that one of the big things, my parents are from Iran and they immigrated here, and one of the big things that really brought me to the libertarian world is understanding why the things happened in Iran the way they did when the CIA overthrew a secular democracy in 1953 for oil, and they instilled a dictator, which eventually led to radicalized theocracy, which they have today. And I think ISIS is crazy and radical, but I try to listen to their interviews, and they're just saying, Americans are here bombing us, and we're fighting back. And, when you look at all of these terrorist groups around the Middle East and Africa and Asia, they just keep talking about Western imperialism.
I think I will agree with you to some degree. That's what they are saying. I think they are religiously motivated, and they believe in global Sharia law. They are bat crazy and very dangerous. But I will agree with you on this point. I'm so tired of... no wonder people in the Middle East... I would hate us if I lived in the Middle East. You're in the Middle East, and you say... We've said to people, hey, we stand for these principles. And we do many times. But then we also have a ghost plane that goes and flies people in to the secret prisons with our buddy in Egypt, who is a horrible, horrible dictator. We don't have any values or principles. That's the way I would view us. There's no principles.
And I think Americans we tend to have a very short memory when it comes to history. A few months ago, we were talking about arming the rebels in Syria to dethrone Assad. But it's these same rebels, these same groups, that are now fighting with ISIS. So in order to understand how to proceed from where we are, we have to see why we got here. And I think until Americans, we begin to accept that we have a imperialistic presence in the world, we're not going to really have progress towards peace. I agree that ISIS is crazy. I'm not saying that we deserve it. I'm not blaming America.
Right.
Because we don't. The American people have nothing to do with the violence that's given to them, especially the journalists who are getting their heads cut off. It's a gross...
it's sick.
Sick. It's completely sick.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the Nazi analogy, though, because besides, I guess... in recent history, there's no one that you could really compare them to in a sort of like brutal, just to the core, to the bone, like offensiveness of their tactics. But like Woodrow Wilson was a large reason why Hitler came to power.
Yep.
This is a result.
And you know what? This is where, if you can agree here on this, I would join your ranks on this. Woodrow Wilson did not create the Nazi movement.
No, but
Adolf Hitler was nuts. And the Nazis were going to come one way or another. They're crazy little... But Woodrow Wilson created all of the conditions because we said, we're going to do it our way. Literally take away the chair from the peace treaty table. Guess you Germans should have thought of that before you started the war. Oh my gosh, are you crazy? And we humiliated them. And the Middle East is all about humiliation. And so we have this humiliation that's going on, and then these crazy people say, I'll stop your humiliation. And hungry, desperate people will listen to crazy people. And that's what's happening.
Right, and I think one of the big things is if you were growing up in Iraq, imagine, we invaded in 2003, was it? 2004? 2004, yeah. So, I was a kid in 2004. I was in high school. Imagine those kids who grew up in Iraq from being kids to now they're our age in their 20s, and all they've really known is death and destruction. So, I try really hard to understand why people do the things they do. And I try to put myself in their shoes and say, if some foreign government was destroying my country for my entire life and some radical group came to me and said, hey, we can fight these people.
Can I ask you this? Is it so different, and I hope you guys aren't 9/11 truthers. Are you 9/11 truthers?
No.
Okay. There's a lot of libertarians who are like, they go off the deep end. It's like that. There are many people who are now finding themselves standing with people they agree with some of the principles, but they're finding themselves roped into these conspiracies like 9/11 truther stuff because they're like, yeah, well, I know these guys are lying to me. Maybe that is true. And while I do think the leadership of ISIS is bat crazy and evil, I think there's a lot of peripheral people and a lot of people who are just like, turn a blind eye.
It's important to note that right now the Islamic State is a state. Iraq is part of history as far as we should be concerned in thinking about it. But they're a state surrounded by Iran, Syria, these forces over there that have an interest in combating the Islamic State. If only there was more pressure on them to take care of the problem. Qatar. All these different factions, and that could be doing so much more to take down the Islamic State. The Islamic State has moved onto the border with Israel, and as Barack Obama is just dripping in more and more soldiers on the border of Syria. So this is a domino effect that's out of the hands of the American people in a large part, and that's part of the reason why we're so active is because foreign policy has always been out of the hands of the American people. That's the nature of an empire. But if people work together locally and try to nullify this empire and go back to a constitutional republic, going in that direction, our security and our liberty would be much better for it.
Okay, good. We're going to come right back. Just a second.
5 separate commercials.
Roll Zulu, fade up sound. Keep them there.
All right. So let me start with, because you're challenging the GOP, but you're not trying to start a third party, right?
Not at all.
Okay. So what are your principles? Who are you? What is it?
I like to say that we're trying to reclaim the American right, and as libertarians, our principles stem from a very basic thing called the non-aggression principle, which is do not initiate violence on others and only in self-defense, for no reason. There should be no reason that we should initiate violence against other people who are being peaceful. And also self-ownership, which is we own our body and we own the fruits of our labors. So that, when we're talking about foreign policy, I just believe in non-aggression. We shouldn't be initiating violence on people who aren't really doing anything to us in the first place. I believe in self-defense. If somebody tries to hurt you, you should be able to completely defend yourself. But
let's see if I can agree with you on this. I believe that what we should have done after September 11th is pounded the bat snot out of those caves and pounded the guys responsible and then left. It should have been done in about 25 minutes.
That's what Ron Paul said, get in and get out.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen,
Yeah.
sadly. So what we're trying to do is slowly interject these ideas into the Republican Party. And, Noah, you can go up.
Yeah, all of us got started during the Ron Paul campaign, whether that was 2008, I think, for me, or 2012.
Started, but 2012 is when we all got together in the headquarters in Los Angeles.
A lot of our principles are very similar to the Ron Paul positions of non-aggression, of non-intervention, of sound money. And we've done a lot to be really involved in the party, actually. So we're not just libertarians who take these positions and go on Facebook and argue all the time.
Too many philosophers.
Yeah, there are too many philosophers, but we actually got our hands dirty. Each of us pulled papers and ran for Central Committee to be locally elected officials. So we were proud to be on the primary, and we were elected or appointed to our positions. And we've been since just climbing the rank through the establishment party. We've gone to the meetings.
So wicked smart for doing that.
And we've just stayed present there with them.
What inspired me to get involved was because when Ron Paul left, we were wondering, what else is there left to do? And I think that, to me, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are extensions of the federal government at this point. They're not like parties in the sense that we were taught in school about how political parties are supposed to represent the people. So they're more attached to the government. I mean, our tax dollars pay for their conventions. You know what I mean? It's basically that's who they represent more is special interest, federal usurpation of the Constitution's sort of power. So if the question comes up, sometimes people say, well, why don't we have a third party? And the joke is, well, it'd be nice to have a second party. I think we're actually building that second party, right. And that's the way we've found a lot of success in growing our membership and coming into the Central Committee. And the people, the Republican Party establishment, are some of them are coming our way. Other ones are just standing by, and they're sort of in a panicky mode, like you'd expect from the IRS during an investigation or government before sequestration.
But they like us being there. They like the youth. They want us. They like that we're active, that we're young, that we're diverse.
We're very diverse, and that's the really cool thing. Whenever you come into a Republican Liberty Caucus meeting in LA County, you see all colors of the rainbow, every type of person, socioeconomic status, gender, race, whatever, religion. And we all come together because freedom just brings people together, and we got to see that instead of just talking about it. You always hear people say, oh, freedom is great and all this stuff. Well, we're living it now, and we're seeing that in only a short time. In 2012, we all started this. 2011, 2012, we really started our political action, and it's 2014 now, and we've accomplished so much.
We've got people elected to the board of the party.
Yeah.
We've got a good friend of ours, Art Alas, running for Congress. And he has a great campaign against Grace Napolitano, who's been there for far too long and done far too little to help the people. And we've got our volunteers knocking on doors, doing papers. We're actually getting our hands dirty in the political system, meeting people, not trying to eschew the conservative-minded people. We're trying to build the coalitions.
Yeah,
so
I think libertarianism is, it's not like libertarians shouldn't go out there trying to make other people libertarian all the time, right? That's probably the first libertarian you run into is someone trying to convert you or something. And I think the fun thing is just making it fun to be around libertarians, and I think
libertarians haven't been cool for a long time.
we're trying to make it cool.
They haven't been cool since like
Libertarianism
1914.
is cool, and part of the reason why it's cool for both the left and the right is it's an authenticating factor. For conservatives, you may not think of yourself as a libertarian, but you can help yourself authenticate your own views because the libertarian view is so harsh. It starts from a basic premise that the government is a gang of thieves writ large, and that we have very strict definitions of taxation is theft, and we don't mamby-pamby around that kind of language.
No,
so
you
conservative.
haven't yet. Okay. Hang on, I got to take a break. I have to take a break. Back in a second.
4, take 4. Stand about 5. 3 also has a shot. 3 to 4s in both monitors.
Okay, I want to hit one more thing. We were just talking about it in the break, and that is the difference between religion and faith, because there is I mean, when Penn Jillette and I first started getting to know each other, he did not like me because of religion. Although I think I was more open-minded about his atheism. We've come to this real understanding that there are good people of faith and good people of religion and bad people of religion. Good people that don't believe in God and bad people that don't believe in God. People are people. But there's this butting of heads of libertarians don't like people of faith, and people of faith don't like libertarians, generally speaking. Noah, live up to your name. Tell me about faith and libertarianism.
Well, I think just reading the gospel, I'm a Christian myself. Christ himself has a very libertarian perspective on the world. Love your neighbor, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And when you look at his stance against the government, he actually stood against Caesar. And because he wasn't killed for being just a pious man, he was killed because his principles undermined the authority of the state. If you're going to live for God, you can't live for the if you're going to live for the kingdom of heaven, you can't live for the kingdom of this world.
Right.
So I think that Christians and religious people of faith, but particularly Christians, have a strong ground to speak in a libertarian manner, that people should be responsible for their actions, and we should have a voluntary society where we work together, where charity doesn't come from just government stipends, but it comes from the heart. And the laws, like abortion, gay rights, things like this, we have a very laissez-faire attitude about it. But it's not because we don't care about those issues. I'm pro-life. But I think that unless the people's hearts change, the laws aren't going to mean anything.
And another thing that I like to bring up is that Noah's super religious. I'm not religious at all, but we agree because we both adhere to the non-aggression principle. We don't believe we should initiate violence on other humans for any other reason, and that's what truly brings us together. It's that
we'll vote for violence.
Yeah. So, I always tell people who are going at each other's throats, who are the religious people and non-religious people, if you guys aren't hurting each other, then you should be working together.
Right.
And that's, like Noah was saying, those are Christian principles. So,
it's when we start to, it's when we feel that we are under attack, that we start to attack, or if we want instead of reconciliation, vengeance, and we're not going to win. We're not going to win. There is no winning in this. We have to find our way to each other and realize, look, if you're not killing people, can we just agree? I don't care what you call them. Can we agree on the top 10 commandments? What do you say? Give me 7. Give me 7 out of the 10. Let's not kill people. Let's not covet things. Let's not, sleep with each other's wives. Let's just do those things. What do you say? If we could just self-rule on those things, we would be golden.
Yeah.
We would be golden.
And as you were saying, we are trying to really bring everybody together, regardless of what they really believe. We're trying to find common ground with people. We're trying to work with people because, like I was saying, everybody keeps fighting in politics. And we are trying to bring a new face to this society where we can actually be working together instead of jumping at each other's throats because one person thinks something about gay marriage and then the other person thinks that about gay marriage.
Okay, I've got 30 seconds.
Well, the way we do that in practice is through coalitions. So I would recommend to people, when you go back home and you want to be politically active, pick an issue that's really strong for you. In Los Angeles, we're taking apart the NSA and the local parking Politburo. So, whatever level it is, if you find an issue, you're more likely going to find people to come together with you.
Okay.
The coalitions grow, and we can do that with libertarianism at the center.
Guys, thank you very much. Back in a minute.